Welcome to EPG Pathshala. This is a module on language change as part of the course Introduction to Linguistics. I am your course teacher for this module. I am Anish Koshi. I teach at the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. In this module, we would like to introduce you to various factors and processes that lead to language change and the different kinds of language change that have been observed in the languages of the world. To begin with, let us try to understand what exactly do we mean by language change. Language change could refer to change in any aspect of the analysis of a language. It could refer to sounds changing in a language. It could be used to refer to new words being introduced in the language. It can be used to refer to some words going out of use in a language. It can also be used to refer to various kinds of syntactic changes that may take place in a language. How do linguists view language change? The term itself is self-explanatory, but linguists have had to work on this aspect of explaining language change because of the attitudes that many users of language have towards their languages. For linguists, language change is a natural, inevitable, and continuous process. When we call it a continuous process, we mean to say that language change is not something that has been happening now suddenly and it is something that has never happened in the past. Every language known to humanity, ones existing today or those that have been extinct, have undergone a process of change. We also call this as a natural and inevitable change. This is because, contrary to what many users of language believe, that language change is some kind of a corruption of language, what linguists believe is that it is a natural process, and therefore any attempt to preserve a language, to stop it from changing, is actually trying to interfere with a natural process that could eventually lead to either the death of the language or to its complete disuse. Let us take an example from our own country. Sanskrit, one language which was the language of literature, one of the languages of antiquity, today, according to the 2001 census on languages, is spoken by 14,000 speakers in India. This might sound quite a lot, except when we compare it with other languages spoken in a country of 1.2 billion people, where languages like Hindi, Marathi, Bangla, Odia, and you name it, are spoken by millions of speakers. So what happened to Sanskrit? Sanskrit was artificially tried to be preserved by those who had command over the language, who knew how to use it. This interference with a natural process of change led to the more spoken variety of Sanskrit, known as Prakrit, to develop into multiple forms that we know as the modern Indo-Aryan languages today. Therefore, technically, when we speak about the modern Indo-Aryan languages like Hindi and Bangla and Odia, it is incorrect to even say that they are daughters of Sanskrit. They are actually daughters of Prakrit, the spoken form, the dynamic form, the form that people used and that which dynamically changed over time. Sanskrit became a library language, a language retained only in the grammar books. Let us now look at the different causes of language change. One of the most important causes of language change is language contact. Languages come into contact through the speakers of these languages. When speakers of two languages come into contact with each other, they bring with them the material cultures that they represent and introducing them to speakers of other languages. So when speakers of different languages meet, come into contact, They are acquainted to items and ideas that did not exist in their language. Now, once they borrow these items into their language, what do they do with them? One option is to create new words for them. The other is to directly borrow the words that exist for them in the language. I am sure most of the languages that you speak have no native words for words like megapixels or tablets and the like. We've just borrowed them as they are. We will deal with this aspect of change, that is language contact, in more detail in another module. Another important cause for language change is psychological factors. Psychological factors refer to the concept of least effort. Most speakers prefer their languages to be uniform, but languages happen to have many exceptions. Look at the way the ing is used in English verbs and the ed is used in English verbs. Most English verbs would happily accept the ing ending, but there are so many exceptions to the use of the ed past affix. There is no reason why verbs like catch or verbs like take cannot take the ed suffix. For example, something that rhymes with catch, match, makes its past tense with the ed. Something that rhymes with take, say for example bake, makes its past tense with ed. Therefore, it is possible that in the future, due to this whole issue of not having to make extra effort, speakers may reduce such exceptions to fall into the regular patterns, because the existence of exceptions in any language is problematic because it imposes extra memory issues for the speakers of the language. Another reason for language change is diffusion. That is, when languages are in contact with each other, they borrow features from each other and linguistic features spread from one language to another, resulting in what are known as linguistic areas. We will deal with this in more detail in another module on linguistic acculturation. So then, what are the different types of language changes observed in the languages of the world? To start with, we see that there is something called sound change. We are very familiar with the letter X in our English alphabet, which is supposed to represent the sound H, which does not exist anymore in language. So words that had them have changed their pronunciation. So is the case of R full and R less English. The British variety prefers to have words like father, mother, brother, etc. pronounced without the final R sound, whereas the English variety prefers to pronounce them with a rhotic accent as brother and father, etc. The actual situation historically being that even the English variety was once upon a time rhotic and R full, and it has changed as a process of language change. Another instance of language change is lexical change. You would be surprised to hear that the word for lady, for example, in Old English was lufdij, a word that is very difficult even to pronounce today. Euphemism, which is a process whereby we try to invent new words to stand for concepts which are generally considered offensive, not acceptable, is another process of lexical change. Think of the different words, for example, that exist to represent the concept of toilet in English language. From using the word lavatory to western closet, to calling them bathroom, to washroom, to convenience room, we've been inventing new words to euphemistically represent the same concept. And this is an instance of lexical change. A very important aspect of language change is semantic change, that is the change in the meaning of words. Semantic change in language is studied in terms of generalization, specialization, metaphorical extensions, and grammaticalizations. Generalization refers to a word with a more specific meaning coming to be used in a very generic sense in the modern usage. Think of adverbs in English like horribly and terribly, which today are reduced to convey a meaning of intensifier or very. But look at the root of these words. Terribly is derived from terror. Horribly is derived from horror. These meanings that were part of these adverbs once upon a time have been lost. The process of specialization is a process whereby meanings which are more broader and generic are reduced in scope in the language. In the King James Version of the Christian Bible, one of the earliest English translations of the Bible, done around 500 years ago, we find a verse in Genesis 1:29 which reads, "And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for meat." Yes, you heard me correct. It shall be for you meat. In our language today, meat refers only to animal flesh. But in the time when the King James Version of the Bible was being written, the word meat could refer to any food. So what has actually happened is a process of specialization, where a word that was very generic has been now made very specific in its semantic content. Another kind of semantic change is metaphorical extension. It is possible that in a language, a word with a specific meaning may be metaphorically extended to convey larger senses. Let us look at the example of a word like position. The word position in English originally would mean the place where a particular object or a thing is placed. But today it can be metaphorically extended from a physical place to mean a condition or a situation that somebody is in, so much so to allow you to say that I am not in a position to answer your question, where you do not refer to any physical space but to a metaphorical situation or condition. Another instance of semantic change is the process of grammaticalization, where words with semantic content have been used in a grammatical manner in the process of which they have lost their lexical content or their meaning. The future expressing modal in English will, once upon a time, was used as a lexical verb which had a meaning want. Coming closer home, you would find in languages like Hindi expressions like toot gaya, or in Malayalam expressions like potti poi, where words like gaya and poi are actually lexical words which mean go, but have been grammaticalized today to only express an adverbial meaning of completion. Other kinds of linguistic changes include syntactic changes. Interestingly, in the history of English, for example, both WH questions and polar questions, which express yes-no type questions, have undergone changes from Shakespearean times to today. So it was okay for William Shakespeare to use a sentence like this: "Call you that keeping for a gentleman of my birth?" Shakespeare was not forced like us to use a do support and make the sentence as "Do you call that keeping for a gentleman of my birth?" Similarly, in WH questions, William Shakespeare could say, "What says Polonius?" Whereas I and you today are required to say the same sentence as "What does Polonius say?" Do support as a syntactic phenomenon, as you can see, was not a compulsory requirement in the English of Shakespearean times, and today, as a process of syntactic change, has become a compulsory aspect of the English language that I and you speak. The last type of change that we want to deal with is analogical change. Analogical change is change that happens in language following patterns that are already available in the language. To this, we could once again bring back the examples we had discussed earlier of the ed marked past tense suffixes in English. As we said then, there are many verbs in English which do not take the ed past tense suffix, which could have taken it, and if language changes so as to make more and more words fit into the regular pattern of ed past affixes, this would be an instance of analogical change. The last section of this module deals with models of studying language change. Linguists maintain that linguistic varieties differ incrementally over geographical spaces. What that means is that as we move from one geographical location to another geographical location, we see very little changes among the two languages that we consider, so much so that they are considered mutually intelligible. But as the geographical space increases, mutual intelligibility decreases and we declare them to be independent languages. There are two models that are generally used for studying language change, one called the wave model of linguistic change and the other employed in dialect geography. The wave model of language change takes as its starting point the axiomatic statement we said earlier that linguistic varieties differ incrementally across geographical space. Linguistic change is thus considered equivalent to what happens when you throw a piece of stone to a pool of water. The place where the stone makes its contact has the maximum displacement of the water, and water spreads out like waves, eventually dying out. Same happens with language change. It occurs and it starts at a particular geographical location, and it would be the most intense at that point, and as the change spreads, it spreads like waves, eventually affecting languages which are in the vicinity of the point where the change started and not having much of an impact on the varieties that are farther apart. Dialect geographers study this phenomena by plotting linguistic differences on a dialect map. The point of study could be a sound, could be a word, and when you have linguistic varieties that are similar to each other in the study of pronunciation of a particular word and they differ from other varieties, dialect geographers are able to then differentiate one variety of language from another variety of language. To conclude, we can say what we have seen is that language change is a continuous process, a natural process, an incremental process, a process that happens slowly over a period of time such that you may not be even able to see change over a single generation. But it gives us important clues about the different kinds of factors that will have a bearing on the eventual vitality of a language, which will decide the fate of the language, which will decide the process of growth, strength or decline of a language. In conclusion, let us try to recollect the points that we have made in this module. We tried to impress upon you the fact that every language has to change in its history, that we cannot preserve any language from changing, and any attempt of trying to preserve them from what we generally understand as corruption or deterioration of a language is always going to have negative consequences, and it could be as negative as the death of a language. Therefore, languages must be allowed to naturally grow and naturally decline as is their fate. And speakers of a language, as a process of adapting to language change, will adapt to the different factors that affect change. And we saw that different factors that affect change include factors of contact, psychological factors, and factors of diffusion. Of course, we are not islands. We cannot live without being in contact with speakers of other languages, and therefore it is inevitable that in a world which is highly globalized today, we are going to find and meet languages which will have concepts not represented in our languages. Our languages will remain open to adopting words from these languages, and we will remain open to enriching our vocabulary by understanding this phenomenon of language change and how it actually positively helps in the growth of a language. We have also seen in this module different kinds of changes that range from the most elemental changes that happen with the use of sounds, We've seen changes that could be more abstract, like in the case of semantic changes, where we are always in a process of metaphorical extensions, so much so that a linguist says that we live by the metaphors that we have in our languages, so much so that we think through the metaphors that we adapt in our languages. We also see that even higher levels of organization in language, like the level of syntax, can undergo changes, so much so that Shakespeare today appears to be writing in totally a different variety of English, if not a totally different variety of language compared to ours, where do support is such an important grammatical feature. Finally, we also saw that language change is visible only incrementally over geographical spaces, so much so that if you were to move from the westernmost corner of India to the easternmost corner of India, you're not going to find languages changing abruptly every 2 to 3 kilometers. What you're going to see is small incremental changes, but languages remaining mutually intelligible. But as the geographical distances increase, they will become unintelligible. Gujarati is not intelligible to Odia speakers and the like, and there you have different languages being born. Thank you.